Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to do horizontal and vertical pattern repeats of a fabric in a rectangular cushion. There are two techniques that we're going to cover. One is called the quick and easy box cushion approach, and the other one is called the traditional box cushion, which takes a little bit more time and a lot more fabric. However, the look of each is slightly different. The quick and easy box cushion is slightly rounded along the top edge because it has no seams. It's made from a single piece of decorative fabric with seams only at the corners and along the bottom, securing the cushion underlining fabric. While the traditional box cushion has a top edge seam that looks more defined and boxy. It is made from two plates, a top and bottom, and seamed boxing edge strips that are all sewn together, being careful to match the horizontal and vertical repeat in the fabric pattern. The one advantage of the traditional box cushion is that it can accept a piping if desired, but it does take more time and more fabric to construct it. So although we've talked about two types of cushions, this video is really going to go over the traditional box cushion with the two plates and the seamed boxing strips. If you'd rather do the easy one that takes less fabric, the quick and easy box cushion, click the link at the top right or in the description below, and there's a full tutorial video of how to do that. There is one caveat to that video. The quick and easy cushion has a fabric calculator that was not created at the time of making that video. This calculator makes it extremely easy to make these cushions. Just enter your finished dimensions in and it gives you all the necessary information to cut your fabric to size. Let's get started and show you how to make the traditional box cushion for horizontal and vertical pattern repeats.
In this first chapter, we'll show you how to use the Sailrite fabric calculator.
This is the fabric we've selected at the Sailrite website. You can see there is a floral repeat. Scroll down and you can look at specifications to see what the repeat is. It's 27 inches horizontal and 27 inches vertical repeat. If you click on the third image, you can see a full rendering from selvage edge to selvage edge. Visit the Sailrite website and click on Learn and then Fabric Calculator. Then scroll down to Cushions and click that. Here you see multiple types of ways to do cushions. We're going to click on box cushions. Now we're going to enter the width of the fabric, which is 54 inches. Our vertical repeat is 27 inches and our horizontal repeat is 27 inches. Hit the next screen button. Our cushion size is 20 inches on the left side and 30 inches on the front. The thickness of the foam is 4 inches. The other fields are filled in automatically if it's a rectangular cushion. We're going to select seamed boxing because a vertical and horizontal repeat really demands that if you want it to match on the left and right side and front. Now click the Add Cushion button. 2 plates and 4 boxing strips are now applied to our fabric rendering. We're going to move the boxing strips to the bottom because we need to concentrate on pattern matching. The red is the vertical and horizontal repeats. We'll be deleting the second plate since we're using a cushion underlining fabric on the bottom side of our cushion. To do this on a computer, click the right mouse key and then click on Delete. Now click on the panel or boxing you want to delete. We want to delete the second plate. Now grab the first plate and center it between the vertical and horizontal repeats so it's exactly in the center as seen here. On a computer, you can increase the size of the screen by going to View and then Zoom in. Now let's go and find the zipper plaque boxing piece and we'll rotate it 90 degrees by clicking the right mouse button and then the rotate button and clicking on that zipper plaque boxing. This zipper plaque boxing will go along the top edge of the plate, so let's move it up there. And it goes 1 inch over the plate edge. Each square represents 1 inch of fabric. So we placed it so there's 1 inch here. To match the pattern, we're going to count up from the red dashed line, the horizontal one, and count the squares. 7, 8, and 9. The zipper plaque boxing needs to be positioned at that same location, so we'll find the next horizontal red dash line and count up 9 squares from it and center it right there. If it ran into the plate, we'd have to find the next horizontal red dashed line. But as you can see, it did not. Next, we'll grab the front side boxing piece, which is this one, and we'll rotate it 90 degrees by clicking the rotate button and clicking on it. It goes along the front side of the plate 1 inch in. Now from the red dashed horizontal repeat, count the squares again. This one is 9 spaces away. So now we need to find the next horizontal repeat, which is that red line down here, and it needs to go on the bottom side of it 9 spaces away. So we'll count down 9 spaces from that red horizontal repeat line. And it too needs to be centered right there. Next comes the boxing side pieces, the left side and the right side. We're going to grab the left side. Let's make sure this is centered first, which is right about there. And now let's grab that left side boxing piece. It goes up beside the plate 1 inch in over the edge of the plate as seen here. And it needs to be centered with that red horizontal repeat line in the center of it. So we'll move it down to the next pattern repeat, the horizontal repeat that is, and see if it fits. It does not. It runs into the zipper plaque and it also runs into the front boxing piece, so it has to go down to the next horizontal repeat line here. We can use the front boxing piece to determine where the 1 inch would rest. So that goes there, and this is 1 inch over the front boxing piece because it's centered, and the red horizontal repeat is centered here. So these are the locations for it. Let's zoom out. Now we have all this wasted fabric at the top, and we don't have a flower to center. So we're going to click on Cushion Drag and drag all these panels up to the very top to save on fabric. So if you do this, it's going to take a little bit more than 2 yards of fabric. Scroll up to the top and you can see the full list of materials that are required for your cushion or cushions.
Next up, matching the plate and boxing pattern repeats.
Okay, the first thing we want to do is talk about the repeat in this. This is a vertical and horizontal repeat. And here you can see a flower, and here is that same flower. So if we measure from here to here, that gives us, according to the manufacturer, 27-inch repeat, but it's actually 26 3/4. Not that that's a big deal. Then if we go with the repeat going from selvage edge to selvage edge, just find a repeat. Let's just use this flower and go from the bottom of the stem to this one, and that one is actually 27 1/4. This pattern is rather random. There's just flowers everywhere. If you had a large flower, let's say right here in the center of the fabric, and you wanted that to be the center of your cushion, that flower could be here because you don't know where it's going to be cut from when you order the fabric. Could be here, could be here. In any case, if you wanted that flower centered, you'd have to find that particular flower, and then you'd measure from the center of it this direction for your cushion and this direction for your cushion, and obviously these 2 directions. For this, it doesn't matter for us. We can have the flowers be anywhere. So what I need to do is, instead of finding starting at the 27 inches, I'm going to actually start way up here at the top edge of this flower. So I've just picked this flower randomly, and this is where I draw my top line for my top plate. Using the Serrat fabric calculator, I printed out the pattern rendition after I had it nested. So I'm going to use this as my reference. So I'm using a chalk pencil here, which the marks will come off nicely, and I'm marking the center of the fabric. This just makes it easier for me, and I'll probably do this down the entire area of fabric that we're making this cushion for. Now, the width, according to the Serrat fabric calculator, is 30.5. So I'm going to divide that in half, and that's 15 1/4. So at the center line that I just struck, I'm going to strike a line at 15 1/4, and then obviously on this side as well. So again, this is the top plate. So this is the flower that I've chosen. So I'm going to mark right on the edge of that flower so that I can do that at the bottom side as well. So how do I know that I'm straight? Well, if I put it on there, and if I take the one over here on this side and put it exactly on that, and the fabric's laying flat, I know that I am straight. So I'm going to strike a line at this point. This is the top edge of my plate, or the back edge where the zipper would go is what I should say. Okay, now that line's longer than we need because we're only going to here from there. Then the width of my plate is 20.5, so I've got the clear acrylic ruler on my center line, and that means it's going to stop right here. So now I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to line it up so that it's straight with the pattern. So I'm going to pick a pattern that basically falls on that point on this side and make sure that it's the same right here. And that way I know my plate is nice and straight. Yep, that looks good. And we're going to strike a line that is longer than 30.5 for this plate from side to side. Now, what we'll do next is we'll take our clear acrylic ruler, and where we marked here, we will make sure that it is perpendicular to the lines that we just struck. There's the line we struck, so this edge is against that. And I will strike a line from here. Now I want to make sure that this is totally square, and the best way to do that is just to take your clear acrylic ruler and line it up with this line and make sure that that line is going straight up, and it is. Do the same thing over here. When I'm doing horizontal and vertical pattern matching for cushions, I like to mark the side that's going to be the zipper, which is this back side, always for me. So I'm going to mark a Z here, kind of in our seam allowance, and that way I know that this is always going to be the zipper side because we have to match the pattern on each side. Okay, this is where the zipper plaque boxing goes. So we need to look at the repeat here. And you can see this one flower. This is easy to distinguish repeat, which is right here. This is a zipper plaque boxing side. And I drew an arrow down here because the 1 inch has to be added to this side of the boxing, not this side. So I need to find my repeat here and add 1 inch and then measure up and see if I have enough fabric. I've chosen this as my repeat that's easy to find, which is right here. So at that juncture, mark it, and we know that we need to go 1 inch below that, which would be here. So that would be our cut line. And then we know that the zipper plaque boxing needs to be 5 3/4, I believe. So 5 3/4 would put us right here, which means that's awesome. I've got that much extra fabric. So that will work. If I didn't have enough fabric here and I ran to the plate, I'd have to find the next repeat. So I am good. Let's just imagine that our cushion was a different size and we actually didn't have enough fabric and we ran into the top plate. So what I'd do is I'd look for the next pattern repeat down the length of the fabric, which is here, which would mean there'd be a lot of waste. But that's what you would do if you didn't have enough width. Here's where the top plate ended. This is the extra 1 inch. I'm going to strike a line, making sure that it's straight across here. And I'm going to use the repeat to make sure that it is straight. So I'm running at the same distance at all the repeat intersections. Okay, so I'm going a little bit longer than the plate because a zipper plaque could shrink up when you're sewing it. And we want some excess for possible shrinkage. Now we measure up 5 3/4, which is right here. So I'm going to strike a line here, making sure that it's parallel to that line below. According to my fabric calculator, I need this to be 34.5 in length. Divide that in half and it's 17.25. So this is the edge over here, 17.25 from the center line. We're going to do the same thing on that side. So this is our zipper plaque, and it's going to be sewn together to the top plate down below. So I'm going to mark a Z there so we don't get confused. This is our top plate. We're going to find a recognizable pattern. The flower is probably easier here. So see that little white dot on the flower, and then see that little white spot on this little one. I'm going to find this one because it'll be easy. So I'm going to pull the fabric up to where that is, and it looks like it starts here. So if I put a mark right where the other one ended here, and we know that this one ended here, now we have that plate, or now we have that boxing piece for the front piece indicated at those marks. This is the zipper side, this is the front side, and you notice I've drawn a pencil line here because that has to be added to the top side here. So 1 extra inch is added to the top side of the boxing for the front side. So there's our mark here. I'm going to put the 1 inch location right on that. And also here, this is our white area here, so I've got that going parallel across the fabric, and I'm going to strike a line here. This is 1 inch from the top edge, and this line's not long enough. We'll extend it, but at least it gets us a line that we can follow for straightness. We're going to extend this line. It doesn't need to be as long as this, but this just makes it easier for the next step. The overall length for the front boxing is 30.25. Half of that is 15.25. So this is where that boxing will stop from the middle position, and we'll do that same thing on that side. The width of the boxing is 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5, which is right there. So I'm going to strike a line there, and this is perpendicular to that line that we struck. So I'm just going to finish that one off, and we have a line here, and we'll do the same thing on that side. Now we'll strike a line at 4.5 inches from that other line that's parallel to it. And that is our front boxing piece. I like to put a B where it's going to be sewn, and this is going to be sewn at the top. So I put it's kind of hard to do this with this kind of a marking pencil, but a B here. And I'll just put a B on the plate as well there. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my top plate here, and I'm going to cut it out. I'm not going to cut out the boxing pieces yet. I'm going to use this top plate to do the side boxing pieces. It's easier to cut it out and use it. If this were a synthetic fabric that didn't have cotton, I'd use a hot knife and the tempered cutting glass to cut it out so you don't have unraveling, because you do have to manipulate the fabric quite a bit, and I don't want those sides to unravel. But this has some cotton in it, so I can't do that. Because cotton burns a little bit, which we've already discovered here when we tested it. So I'm just going to use a good pair of shears and cut right on those lines that we marked. And we're only cutting out the top plate. So we have our top plate cut out, and I'm going to just put it over here to the side, and I'm going to pull this fabric up, and I'm going to find the next available location to see if I have enough for the side boxing pieces. So here's my next biggest location, and the easy way to do this is to lay it in here and see if it runs into anything, and it does. See, it runs into the zipper plaque boxing because I need this to be this length, so I can't use that. So I'm going to continue to pull it up to the next available spot, and I'll just pull it past the front boxing piece, or close to that, and I put the Z in the back. So there's my Z. That way the pattern matches up. And where does this match? Well, there's a flower here, so we know it's going to match up there. So I'm going to pull it up to that point and lay it down so that everything matches up perfectly. And this will take a little bit of skewing of the fabric. You have to move it around a little bit, make sure everything is perfect. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time to make sure everything's lined up, and then I'll show you what we do next. So it's matched up perfectly around the entire perimeter. And I'm going to put some weights on this, not moving it at all, some sandbag weights. We have a video showing how to make these, which I use all the time. So our side boxing piece will go along this top plate here, and they'll be exactly the same size, okay, as far as from here to here. The extra 1 inch will move in this direction on the boxing pieces. So the best way to do that is to actually just make little tip marks at the corner, like that, and we're going to do that to all 4 corners. Now we're going to move our weights, and we're going to take off the top plate and move it aside. So here is our corner, and remember we need to go an extra inch in. So I'm going to put the clear acrylic ruler on the edge of that line that we struck, right there, and we'll strike a new line that goes to those marks that are going, well, horizontal for you, the viewer of the camera. Can't find that. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, so that is 1 inch away from this side, and we're going to do the same thing on the other side. The width of these is 4.5 according to the Serite fabric calculator. So I can just put this on 4.5 right on that line that we struck, which is right there. Make sure that it's parallel to that line, and we'll strike a line here. And we are going to do that to the other side as well. But while we're here, let's go ahead and put this right on that line so it's parallel here, and strike a line to close up this rectangle. So it's right on that line at the corner, and we're going to do the same thing over here. So horizontal and vertical repeat matching for a cushion takes up a lot of excess fabric. I'm taking up about 76, 77 inches of fabric just to make this 20 by 30 inch by 4 inch cushion. Okay, so now what we do is we just cut out these boxing pieces, and we'll be ready for basting. Zipper, zipper, zipper plaque boxing, we got to sew in the zipper. Side boxing pieces and front boxing pieces. That's a B and a B. So what would happen next if the zipper were sewn in is you'd go blop, 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 and blop. So right now we're going to take the zipper plaque boxing and sew in our zipper.
Up next, creating the zipper plaque boxing.
So here are all of our pieces cut out. They're ready for sewing. We're going to start with the zipper plaque boxing, but before we do that, we're going to use a wet rag and get rid of our chalk mark down the center. We're going to take our zipper plaque, and I'm going to fold it in half to find the middle so that the edge is lined up. And I'm just going to use a pencil here and mark where that fold is, because we need to find the center. And then I'm going to open it up to there. We're going to put a clear acrylic ruler on this and strike a line parallel in the middle and cut this in half. So make sure that the fabric is lined up with your ruler's edge. Remember, this is a light fabric, so sometimes it's a little bit crooked. There, now it's perfectly straight. We'll strike a line all the way across, and we'll cut it in half. Now once we cut this in half, we're going to have a hard time determining which is the center, so I'm just going to strike some lines there because I want to make sure that I put the zipper on the correct end, because we're doing pattern matching. So this is the number 5 coil zipper, and what I typically do just to orientate myself is I put the coil teeth down, because you can see this has teeth that are facing up on this side. You can actually see the teeth on this side. But if you turn it over, the teeth are not visible here. A Vis-on zipper, it doesn't matter, but a coil zipper, it does. So I flip the teeth so that it's facing the right side of the fabric. And then what I do is I fold the fabric and I say, okay, yeah, that's what I'm going for. So I know what side the basting tape goes on. So the basting tape, because we want to put basting tape on this to make sure that we're really accurate, goes on this side with the teeth facing up. And we're using a 1/4 inch seam stick for canvas and upholstery. It's an acrylic glue, not a rubber glue, so it doesn't yellow, and it makes things stick beautifully. Don't get some clone of this. You will not be happy in the future. Make sure you get it from Serite. Once it's on this side, we're going to do the same thing over here. Now we want to keep this as far away from the teeth as possible. That's why I'm putting it up right against the edge of the zipper's flange. Remember again, the teeth are facing up. Our zipper plaque boxing is a little bit too long, but we want a piece that's equal to it or a little bit longer, so I just cut it to size. So now what I like to do is I actually like to just separate the zipper completely, the 2 halves, and let's set the one side aside. And we're going to put this one on so that the teeth, we're going to put this one on so that the flange is up against this edge, and again fold it to make sure that it's right, and it is. So we're going to remove the transfer paper from the double-sided tape, and that leaves the double-sided tape on the zipper. And we want to baste this on without stretching, okay, because you can't actually stretch the fabric or the zipper. So we're going to do this carefully, because remember, we're trying to do pattern matching. Do too much stretching and it won't match. So I'm putting it on nice and gentle and smooth. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with this one here. So here I've got my second piece. I'm going to take off the paper, and we're going to try to start it so that it's exactly the same distance from the edge. So that's sticking over the edge a little bit. We'll stick this one over the edge a little bit and baste it down. Okay, so now we're going to take this and flip it over. And we're going to put double-sided tape. This is the side that has the zipper on it. We're going to put it along this edge, very close to that edge. I like to baste everything in place, especially when I'm dealing with pattern matching. Now, it is true that the center is not going to match up with anything because we're taking away fabric. And that's okay. This is the back side of the cushion. But we still want to be very accurate with a cushion like this because usually they cost extra. We're going to do the same thing with this one because there's a lot more thinking involved in this kind of a cushion. So why not use basting tape? Make sure everything's perfect. We're going to peel off the transfer paper and we're going to make our fold. There we go. Now what I want to do here is fold this back. Let me see if there's a way I can make it easy for you guys to see. I usually do it with it down like this. Let's just do it the way I do it. And see that fold? I want that a little bit behind the teeth. Okay, so I just look as I'm basting and try to get that fold accurate. The nice thing about double-sided tape is that if you're off, then you can fix it. So see how the fold is almost in the center of the teeth? That conceals the zipper. So we're going to do this down the entire length, and we're going to do that same thing to the second piece. If it doesn't look good, rip it up and redo it. So when you're done, when you put these two together, it should be about 4.5, and it's a little teeny bit shy, but that'll be okay. So here's how it should look. The zipper's kind of concealed. If you're shy, then you change your fold. So in other words, if you're really shy, you could actually reduce your fold to make this equal the same as the boxing. Okay. I've got scrap fabric in here. They're using the same fabric that I'm using, and I have a number 16 needle and an upholstery thread, and I'm set at 4 millimeters. I want to check tension. You want to set tension in some scrap, and 2 layers is typically how you set it. You don't want the knot on the top side because it'll cause excessive puckering. You want that knot to be a little bit on the bottom side, which it looks like it is. I might release some tension more to get the knot more on the bottom because I don't want it to pucker up. So I'm happy with the stitch. I'm going to start sewing my zipper plaque. Okay, my zipper's on like this. The teeth are facing the fold, and I have everything basted, so this is super fast. I'm going to use the right side of the presser foot and get it right up against the zipper's teeth, and then just sew. And I don't need to do any reversing because this is too long already because we expect a little bit of shrinkage. Because everything is basted, it is this fast. Now when I get to the end, I'm going to stop and I'll just put my second one in and we'll continue on. I'm going to cut where those threads are, and then we're going to match this up. It won't be perfectly matched to the zipper because we've taken some fabric, but we want to try to get the patterns going the right way, because if you do this on, anyway. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zip these together. So here's my slider, and I usually slide the fat end on. Well, you have to do it because this side up here, it receives the fat side of the coil's zipper. So it has to be on that same side as the coil. And I start it here like this, and I match up the other side, and I push it on, hopefully making sure that the fabric matches up. If it doesn't, I re-put it on again. And hopefully the ends are matched up. Yes, that is pretty good. They're almost perfectly matched up. Okay, believe it or not, I'm gonna zip all the way through and off. Okay, so now I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna separate the teeth just a little bit, and we're gonna re-put this on. This closes up the zipper. So we're putting it back on again. Hopefully. There we go. Nope. And the ends are still matched up. So we're going to leave the slider in the middle position so we don't forget that. So the Z is here, the Z is here. These get matched up, and I still have a little bit of the center mark I can see. So I'm going to put that right on the center mark of the plate, and then I can know exactly where I need to cut it. These patterns won't match up because remember we have an extra inch of fabric, which is for seam allowance. So there's where I cut. Center is matched up. Here's where I cut, right where the end of the plate matches up. So I'm going to use a clear acrylic ruler because I want this cut to be perpendicular to the long edge, and I'm going to strike a line. Whoops, because I don't want this to be crooked. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side so we know exactly where we need to cut. I'm going to cut through the zipper. Good, and we'll do the same thing over here.
Next up, sewing the boxing ends together.
Zipper ends have been cut off so that they're even with the size of the plate. We're now going to sew boxing ends together. So we're going to take the side boxing and we're going to lay it so outside surfaces face each other, and this corner must be joined together. So we're going to lay it like this, and we'll sew a 1/2 inch here. This one, this has to be joined together, so we're going to lay it like this. This is usually how I do it, and then I fold this back, and I fold this back, and I sew these 3 pieces together first, then we'll talk about that one. So here's my boxing piece. Remember we said that the boxing for the zipper plaque was a little teeny bit shy of 4.5 inches, so I'm just going to center it there, but I need to make sure this end is matched up. And I've cut some scrap fabric, just a little rectangle, and I like to fold this in half and put it right on top of the teeth here. This just kind of gives it some reinforcement for the zipper. And we need to sew a 1/2 inch here. So I'm going to do a teeny bit of reversing just to lock that stitch in place. And then I'm going to sew at the 1/2 inch, making sure that I'm a 1/2 inch from that edge because that's very important for pattern matching. We're going to sew over the teeth and sew to this side and do a little bit of reversing here. Okay, there we are with that. Okay, so we're on the other side and it lines up to that edge, and I've got my scrap piece here to reinforce that zipper. I like to put the fold in. Nobody's going to see that. Just a little bit of reinforcing. And we'll do the same thing here. Okay, with this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show using double-sided tape, because you could have done that with the zipper side too. It just makes it a little bit easier. So we're just going to put it on the end of the front boxing pieces like that. Put that back into position. This piece is sewn, and remember the Z's are facing each other, so this would go on like this. This goes on like that, which means that this and this outside surfaces would face each other, gets basted like that. So what I'll do is I'll just put this over here, and we'll take off the double-sided tape. And we'll take off the transfer paper, revealing the glue, and we'll baste this so it's nice and straight. So let's put this so that it's straight, and then put this on top so it's straight. Baste it down like that, Okay, so now this would go like that. We'd just lay that in the position. And then this side, because you want to really do this because you got to make sure it's all accurate. So the Z is here again. This goes around like this, which means these two get put on like this. So outside surfaces face each other, and we'll baste these together in the same manner. Here's a helpful tip. It should look like that. If it's got a twist in it, it's wrong. But as long as it's like this, no twists, it's perfect. Let's take it over and sew this next one on. Okay, we're going to sew through this and do a little bit of reversing at the beginning. Not much. And the end. 1/2 inch from the edge. And then since it's basted together, we don't have to worry about doing it wrong for the next piece. Just put it in and do the same thing.
In this chapter, we'll be cutting the foam and bottom plate to size.
We're using a high density foam here. This is 4-inch. It's a polyurethane foam. Density has to do with longevity. IFD, indentation force deflection, has to do with how soft or how firm it is. This is actually a firm foam. So I've marked it to size. It's 30.5 inches. We want our desired size is 30 inches. And it's 20.5 inches this way. Our desired size is 20. So the foam is typically cut a 1/2 inch bigger in the 2 dimensions. We're going to use a serrate blade foam saw, but you can also use an electric kitchen knife to cut foam. So we're using cushion underlining for the underside of the cushion. You can't match patterns on the underside, obviously, because the size of the cushion would render that useless. And what I'll do is I'll take my top plate and I'll just position it onto the cushion underlining material. You can also use Fifertex for the bottom of your cushion, but this cushion underlining material is rather inexpensive, so I like to use it. I'm just going to match it up, and I'm going to cut this out to match the exact same size as the top plate. No reason to use a hot knife on the cushion underlining material. It's a vinyl material. It's not going to unravel, so just use scissors.
Next up, sewing the boxing to the top plate.
We are going to apply Seamstick Basting Tape around the top plate, and we're going to be careful not to stretch the fabric as we do this. This, in my opinion, for vertical and horizontal pattern matching, or any matching for the most part, is so important. So notice that I ripped the tape on each side. I break it, and I want to get very close to this edge because I don't want this double-sided tape to show up when I sew. So I put my finger on top of the double-sided tape and just rip. So we're going to do this to all 4 sides. This is the zipper plaque side, so I'm going to peel off the transfer paper. Hey, you've got to get your double-sided tape from Sarai because it's an acrylic glue. I know we talked about that earlier, but it is that important because there's all kinds of glues that are rubber-based, and they turn extremely yellow and gum up and so forth. So now, this is the side with the Z. This is the side with the Z. It's not going to match up unless you folded it a 1/2 inch. So technically, if we've done it right, this corner down here should match up with this one, and our pattern should be right. But sometimes it's off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not press firmly on it, and I'm going to baste it in place along this edge. So I should have this edge matched up. And to check, what I want to do is I haven't pressed firmly. I'm going to find a pattern, like here's a pretty distinguishable pattern. I'm going to hold at approximately 1/2 inch with my fingernail, okay? Then I'm going to lift the fabric and I'm going to check. And wow, look at that. That one's pretty good. Now notice if you don't do that, see how it looks off? So this pattern, it doesn't look like it's matched up. Well, again, if I take my fingernail and hold it at a 1/2 inch, which is where my stitch is going to go, and then lift it, look at that. That's actually nice. Now this is what I like to match up, the sticks and stuff like that. Hold it at a 1/2 inch, matched up perfectly. So we want to check that all along the length, because remember, you can stretch it. So hold it a 1/2 inch and check. See, this one's off a teeny bit. It's not terrible, but it could be adjusted. But I'm gonna go down further. Here's a leaf, 1/2 inch, lift up. Wow, that's pretty good right there. Over here, here's another pattern, 1/2 inch, hold, lift up. This one is off, unless I'm not at a 1/2 inch. Let's see if I am. Yeah, this one's off. So what I need to do is I need to move the pattern down this direction, and you can actually stretch it a little bit. So where we were lined up, right over here, I'm going to lift this up, and I'm going to rebaste it. This is the tricky part, and this is why the basting tape is so important. I'm going to pull a little bit more on the boxing as I baste, and here I can check here. You know, I pulled too much because I'm a little bit off. So this is where you have to be diligent and try to get everything to match up before you take it to the sewing machine and sew. Now that's perfect. My finger at a 1/2 inch here, check. Wow, we are almost right on there. Here's my last pattern. Yep, that's good. So now I'm going to press firmly on it, and that one's down. So now we're going to work on the side boxing pieces. We'll just start with this side over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel this back. I've got it in the general position that I need it to go, which is what I like to do before I peel off the transfer paper. And we're going to reveal this double-sided tape. You can see the importance of the double-sided tape, because with a pattern this complicated, it takes a lot of finagling, whatever that word is. So we're going to turn this corner and baste this down roughly like that. And we might have to do some modifications like we had to do with the zipper plaque. So I'm going to flip this around so the camera guy can get a better shot of what we're doing here. Okay, so I've got it basted in the position. You know, one other thing you could do if you want to just check for a 1/2 inch is actually just take your clear acrylic ruler and mark a 1/2 inch on the backside of this plate, and that way you know exactly where to hold your finger for pattern matching. And I'm just going to use a pencil and do this lightly. So that's a 1/2 inch. So now where can I, here's a flower. Let's put my finger on the 1/2 inch, lift it up. Not bad. Here's a stem. It's a teeny bit off, but I'm not too unhappy with that. Here's a leaf. That's pretty good. Let's go over here. That one's almost right on. I'm going to leave that. I actually think that's good. So that one's done. Now we're going to go to the other side and do the exact same thing. This side's done. Zipper plaque's done. This side's done. I'm going to flip it around and do the front side in the same manner. Let's see. So it goes on like that. If you lift this up, you can see how that goes. So we're going to baste this and make sure it matches up. What I've done now is I've basically folded the ends over so you can see this piece is on top. It doesn't matter which piece is on top. And I folded this in like that. So now I can see the corners. And when we sew 1/2 inch here and make this corner, we're going to have to make a turn. So see, there's my stitch here. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to cut in the top plate, but I'm going to cut in the boxing almost to a 1/2 inch right along that stitch. So right there. And that will allow this to take the turn. So at this corner, I'll just position it so you can see it. Same thing here. So this is my boxing piece, and I'm going to separate it from the top plate a little bit here, and I'm going to make a slip very close to that stitch, going no deeper than a 1/2 inch. If you don't want to go all the way to the 1/2 inch. So we're going to do that at all the corners. We're ready to sew, and I like to start at the back, in the middle approximately, doesn't really matter. And all of our patterns matched up. Oops, I need to raise the presser foot. All of our patterns matched up. So I'm going to use my deluxe 5.5 inch magnetic guide here. And we're not going to do any reversing because we're just going to sew over this starting stitch. We're sewing 4 millimeters And we'll just keep that fabric up against there, which puts our stitch at exactly a 1/2 inch, just like we calculated. And when we get to the corner, which I'm getting closer to now, I am going to stop where I made that slit, which should be about a 1/2 inch. Make sure that I don't sew any excess fabric in, so you can fold this fabric out like that. And we're going to sew right to that point and bury our needle. So our needle's buried, and I'm going to have it come up just a little bit so I don't get a skip stitch. The needle comes up a little bit in a buried position. You can pivot and not get a skip stitch. I'm going to lift the presser foot and I'm going to rotate this around. I've got everything basted, so nothing's going to move on me. There we go. Had to lift the presser foot. Now this tail, you can either open it up. I like to just sew over it. This is a fairly light fabric, so I'm just going to sew over this tail and sew down this next leg. So we're going to do this all around the perimeter, and we will show you what is next or when we get close to our previous stitches. So I'm getting close to this corner, and what I'll do is I'll just kind of fold the fabric back, making sure that I don't have this excess fabric, not that it's going to be sewn onto. So let's get to that corner. And I'm going to bury my needle right on that stitch, or very close to that stitch. And the needle's going to come up a little bit so that I don't get a skip stitch. Now I'm going to lift my presser foot and rotate on the buried needle, pull this fabric back, and I'm going to sew over this seam allowance. Doesn't really matter. You can splay it open if you want, or make a slit if you want, but it's a light fabric. And sew down this leg in the same manner. We'll go all the way around to where we started sewing. Because everything is basted in place, this is super fast. Makes sewing easy. Now we're coming up to our previous stitches. We want to land right on top of them. If you don't land on top of them, then you'll see stitches. So I'm going to trim the trailers off. Here's where we started, I'm sorry. So I'm going to make sure that I sew right on top of it by 1 inch or 2. Again, I'm doing no reversing, I'm just sewing over the top. And that should be enough. Okay, this is where the truth comes in. Does it match up? Yes, look at that. There, that stick's nice. That's nice. How do the corners look? Push them out. That's a pretty nice looking corner. Look how it's matched up there. Inspect your corners. Nice corner. So we're ready to sew the bottom plate on.
Sewing the assembly to the bottom plate is coming right up.
Okay, now we're going to take our bottom plate. This is cushion underlining material, and I'm going to put double-sided tape on it so that we can baste it down too. I just think since we're doing that with the regular cushion, why not do it with this? That way we can make sure that corners and everything match up. So we're going to do this around all the sides. We'll peel off the transfer paper and we'll start basting just like we did previously. And let's see, this is the side, there's the notch over here. So now our boxing goes on. I'm going to turn this so you can see it a little bit better, so that its edges would line up with this. Remember, we're not pattern matching now, we're just matching up the corners. And this is a fairly small cushion. So I'll start basting here with the edges lined up, and then if we're off at this corner, I can make adjustments. Remember, this decorative fabric actually stretches pretty nicely, or you can shrink it up too if it's off. So see, I got too much fabric over here. Yeah, I need to rebaste a little bit because I want that corner to fall a ½ inch from this edge. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because this one's actually falling right on that corner, I'm going to actually shrink this up a little bit, which I'm not going to have wrinkles. I'm just not pulling hardly at all. I'm kind of letting it relax. I'll try to get my hands out of the way. So see how I'm letting it relax as I baste? This should shrink this up a little bit so that our corners match up. Yes, look at that. So much better. Okay, we're going to do that all around the perimeter, basting it. So we have our cushion underlining material on the bottom side, and you can see the outside surfaces is obviously facing the cushion underlining material. There's no right side or wrong side for it. Because it's basted, it is so simple. Now we're going to start in the back side, somewhere close to the middle. Again, I'm not going to do any reversing here. I'm just going to start sewing, and we'll sew over those stitches just like we did before. So we'll sew 1/2 inch from the edge. Now we're coming to this corner. Now I didn't put a slit in here, and so we need to do that. And I'm going to put it in the boxing right prior to that stitch, going no deeper than 1/2 inch. We're coming to this corner, and we didn't make a slit in the boxing like we did when we sewed it to the top plate. So all I'm going to do is separate the boxing. Let's just lift it up here and cut into that boxing right at that stitch, going no deeper than 1/2 inch, which will allow it to take the turn. So now that I have a slit in there, I need to make sure I don't sew through this fabric here, so I'm going to push it kind of out, so like that, and we'll sew up to that, bury our needle right at that stitch, needle coming up a little bit. Now we'll pivot on the buried needle, turn our fabric this way, push this in, make sure that's flat. There we go. See how I turned this seam allowance over this direction? Now it goes the opposite way of the other corner, but we're going to show you what we do about that, because this corner actually goes the opposite direction. Now I lower my foot and I sew down this side. So that's what you do at the corners, and we'll do that all around the perimeter and sew over our previous stitches that we began with. Here's a little helpful hint. If you want to make sure that you don't sew through this fabric at corners, and I've already turned the corner, so what I do is I take a screwdriver in here, and that way I can tuck that fabric in there, and that way you are assured that you are not going to sew the other boxing piece. All right, now, see, here's what I was talking about. If I had sewn in the other direction, which would mean this side would have to be sewn up, I wouldn't have this flipped in the wrong direction. So I have a candy cane here on this seam allowance. So that can easily be resolved just by cutting about 1/4 inch from the stitch and stopping 1/4 inch. So now this is allowed to basically take any shape it wants. And I'm actually going to do that here as well. So you can see I'm about 1/4 inch. Don't cut your boxing, just the seam allowance. Now that is allowed to go wherever it wants. So it's freed up. It is a little bit of a pinch right here, but it's not going to make any difference. So we're going to do that at all the corners. Here's my slider. I'm going to open it up and turn it right side out, and just grab the fabric and do that. And you may want to inspect your corners, make sure everything looks good. I know it is because I basted it. So when you get to a corner, take your finger inside the cushion and push it out like that. That way you don't have to fight that with the foam.
In this chapter, we'll be inserting the foam into our cushion cover.
This is silk film, and it just makes it so much easier to insert your foam. So I'm going to lay it on top. It's center folded. So I have, 20 inches over there, and I'm going to cut it to about 20 inches over here. This is an indoor cushion, so it doesn't really need it for water resistance, though this stuff, it does make things more water resistant. And now we're going to take our foam off and open it up so it's 54 inches wide. So I've got my silk film spread out. I'm going to go like this, and I have probably 6 inches. I have enough silk film to wrap it up basically all the way to the top by about 1 inch. And then I'm going to bring this is the front side of my cushion. This is where the zipper is facing me. I'm going to cover this up. That covers the sides up. You could actually put this on top. And now I'm going to turn it around so you can see. Now we have an opening in the back that we're going to take a shop vac. And a shop vac works better. A small vacuum doesn't work as well. And we're going to put it on the foam. Notice I don't have the silk film in there. It's directly on the foam. And I'm going to hold it and turn it on. Watch what happens. So because this is an indoor cushion, I don't need to protect the foam from water, and I can remove the majority of the silk film and it won't blow up like a balloon when an occupant sits on it. So I'm going to turn off the vacuum, and before the foam gets big again, I'm going to start pulling it out. So as soon as you do this, the foam's going to get very large, but this will give it a little bit of breathability. If this were an outdoor cushion, I would just take off some at the back side and use it as a water barrier. But taking out the silk film like this will keep it from blowing up like a balloon when somebody sits in it. So that should be enough. You can't feel it, that's why they call it silk film. So now we need to position our foam into the corners, so I'm going to put my hand in here and push. So now the silk film can get caught in the zipper. So just try to get the silk film away from the zipper before you start zipping it, because that can cause problems. So I'm pushing the silk film down. So as you can see, we've got perfect pattern matching. Sure, it's off a teeny bit in some areas. That's not uncommon. Look here on the side. Very nice. This side, these are the three sides that are most important. Beautiful pattern matching all across here. Now you won't have pattern matching on the corners because obviously you've got to cut the boxing to a particular size. And on the back side, we have pattern matching here. It's a little bit off there, but we don't have pattern matching where the zipper is, obviously, because you had to take up fabric to close that zipper. But this is the back side of the cushion. Then on the underside, we have that cushion underlining, allows breathability, and it also makes it a little bit sticky on the surface so it doesn't move around. But look how nice and plump it is, very tight. This is a firm foam, so it doesn't compress hardly at all. It's a very high IFD, and it's a high density foam.
Coming up next, a list of the tools and materials we use to get this project done. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call or email. We're glad to help. From all of us here at Sailrite, I'm Seth Grant. Thanks for watching.